Boom. And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Recording today on Wednesday in the afternoon here in Costa Rica. We're going to be taking a look at, yep, you guessed it, the volatility index. And if you didn't guess it, guess what's coming next? Bitcoin, Ethereum. We're going to actually take a look at the DXY, one of the charts that private members have been looking in the background. I think it's a very good idea to be looking at as well, as it is pretty important, I think, to the minds of the more traditional investors, the value of the US dollar versus the assets. So we're going to start off with Bitcoin, just because I love this chart. I think it's so beautiful. What I like about this chart and what it does for me every time I see it, it reminds me to think about the long term. I look back on this fantastic day in 2017, March, when all of a sudden Arcane Bear started our channel. That's what we did. We started our channel back here. And what I like about this, again, is that reminder of time of what happens during a market cycle. When you start something, and you inevitably get to go through it once or twice. Going through it once or twice is really the perspective that's so important. When we started the Arcane Bear channel and we were sharing our sentiment and love for Bitcoin was at like between $600 to $1,000. I remember when it got to $3,000 in September 2017. This is such a big moment. We were in Panama. Everyone was excited. There's like this. We could see that there was a lot going on in this sector. Building, production, new products, new ideas, new innovation, new inspiration, right? This is kind of like the euphoric area. It was right when we started the channel. And the reason why I like this chart and the reason why I like looking back in time is because understanding where we are today. Okay, well, let's imagine that we are starting Arcane Bear today. We're starting over here, right? Here's the new rocket ship. What we have to our advantage is the ability to look in hindsight. In hindsight, we see our selling climax, our first automatic rally, our spring, and then our first few tests and LPSs moving through the box. So as Wyckofians, what we're looking at, I think more importantly, is a real big production of time and value, and time and energy and value kind of mixed together. Because in the short term, let's say you bought your first Bitcoin here. You're like, yes, Bitcoin is going to the moon. It's February 2020, right before the pandemic. And you see this first big downs gap. Boom, 50% down to the floor. You get panicked. It's the middle of the pandemic. You sell part of your position here because you need the money or something like this, right? So you've made a few mistakes here, but nonetheless, your story is started. But you're only, say you entered in February, you're only in here for 220 days so far. What? Pick up any instrument, use a newbie, or get on a surfboard. Show me how good you get over the first 220 days. Now, some of you will make extreme progress very quickly, and I commend you for that because I am often that person as well. I can move through and digest a lot and make a lot of headway very quickly in everything that I'm learning, growing, and doing. But ultimately, what we're about to do next is look at a more condensed time frame picture, but still keep this long frame in perspective. So we're going to look at the dollar index. And the reason we're going to do that as a comparison is because the Bitcoin itself is basically, I think that one of the easiest ways to look at it would be a great rebuilding of something like Swift. It's faster, it costs less, it's more secure, there's no intermediaries that you have to rely on, like banks that are closed on the weekends. And this is right now what we're looking at, a story from 1968, at least what we have in recorded data, all the way to where we are today, September 2020, right? It's like 40, 50, 60 years of data. 50 to 60 years of data. It's very hard for a person to stay focused during that type of growth cycle. Here, back in 2010, I was, even though I was interested in Facebook and stuff like that, I was using it. I was in no way positioned other than I realized I should be investing into it, but I had no other knowledge or wisdom to be able to just make an investment. So when we take these big time frames into account, we start to look closer and closer to what's going on. So let's zoom in on the daily and take a look at the US dollar chart. And what we're going to do right now is pontificate, which basically means I'm going to talk shit about what I believe May or may not be right. It's up to you guys to decide, but this is my best thesis at this moment. There are other people that have similar ideas. Now, in the Bear Den, I want to give a shout out to the few people that had shared this chart. Let's see if I can find it quickly. It was the dollar index chart. Either way, I'll redraw it. No, I can't find it quickly. Live trading, unimportant. Oh yeah, here. Well, anyways, I'm gonna skip back because we're gonna draw it up here anyways. So here in the dollar, since the pandemic, which is effectively, we're talking about $3 trillion of printing, there was this very nice descending channel that started to take place. Now, first off, we want to notice the downtrend because it represents a change of character from where it had been for quite some time. And it was also followed by by the pandemic to some degree. So they were part and parcel with one another. So, $3 trillion gets printed. There's no interest rates. You're not getting rewarded for sitting on dollars. It's not that big of a deal. Why would anyone want to have US dollars, right? So the US dollar had been getting pummeled, basically. But now it's becoming like the cleanest of the shirts in the dirty hamper, right? So you have currencies around the world taking out debt, consistently trying to monetize that debt and effectively ruin their economy from the inside out. The US dollar is doing the same thing, just at a different pace. So meanwhile, other countries that are having problems, they're starting to move into the US dollar. So the US dollar is currently having strength. But what we want to pay attention to is this change of character and the move into an accumulation range, because it actually hasn't fully identified itself to us yet. So for those of you that know, you're part of the Wyckoff study group in the private group, or you're doing it on your own, you're going to recognize something here that I think is important. This motion here. What does this mean? Well, it can actually mean one of two things. We could be seeing the start of an SOS, right? We could see maybe this was our spring here, right? So your preliminary supply, your automatic rally, your spring, your LPS test, and then your breakout. But this could actually very easily become a UTAD test, to come back here, print a lower high, and then come down lower. We do know that there's more stimulus potentially on the way. So we're at a very, very important moment in time where this next little bit here, the next few weeks, is going to tell us a much larger story. If the dollar comes up, closes above this box, we could see Bitcoin drop quite a bit lower, just because, well, again, Bitcoin is more like a replacement for Swift, I think, than anything else. And that's basically what the dollar's utility is. You can send it around the world and it will keep its value. So it's a comparative to Swift in the US dollar. So whether we get a UTAD test and then a lower point of supply and lower, that's one story possibility. Or do we get our SOS, a backup, and then another big phase up? We're going to really want to pay attention to the next little bit through October and this changeover. And when do they print more money? Because when they print more money, ultimately that's going to be a moment where we're either going to watch out. No, it's going to start raining. Or you're going to get excited and you're going to look for a growth moment. You're going to look for something on the up and up, like a rocket ship. There we go. So when we're looking at the market, we're not trying to predict which way it's going to go. We just know that it's got two possibilities now that it's created this range. It creates an SOS and a backup phase that goes higher, LPS, or it creates a UTAD, comes back into the box, forms a lower point, another lower point, a sign of weakness. So one of those two positions. That's the direction we're going to go right now. And again, the reason why I want to label this as important is because it has to do with our overall conversation about Bitcoin. Not that I think long term it makes too much of a difference. I think ultimately Bitcoin will be successful to a degree or another. But what we're looking for is a much more shorter term basis. We're in a lot of chaos and volatility. As we can see, the VIX up today, again, another 2%. So one of the things I want to take a look at here is, okay, so we've gone over Bitcoin. It's long-term story, remember. We could be even like 100 to 300 days out from a real bull market cycle starting in Bitcoin. So be patient. The DXY, or the dollar index chart, showing us that there's two very clear directions it's going to take in the next 25 days, and to be very aware of that, because that will be a big market indicator for the rest of our industry. And then thirdly, the volatility index. We keep creeping higher. There's a lot of uncertainty here in the volatility still. And for good reason. We know people are probably looking at, well, are they going to have secondary lockdowns that will shoot the VIX up, right? Is there going to be more deaths in the and people that can't go to work in fall because it's cold and they're not getting enough vitamin D? That's another spike in the VIX, right? Well, things could go back to normal. We could have, oh my God, everything's going to get worse and people are going to have a hard time during winter, and then they don't. This trend line here, this is very important. Because if we're seeing a new trend in volatility build up, if you see a new volatility build up in the trend line, that's not a good sign. That and I'm going to keep an eye on this because I believe that could lead to a much, much bigger change of character in a lot of other stories along the board. But remember, guys, we're taking this one day at a time, but always trying to remember to look out way over here. Let's talk 2025, right? What's happening in 2025? Where did we get to from here, right? Where did we get to in Bitcoin from here in 2025? Again, that's kind of the story we're looking at. Does Bitcoin have an SOS phase, come back down here, do its final breakout, and then find like a real stride into a bull market closer to 2021? Sounds very likely. Or do we have another big breakdown? Do we actually come through this new accumulation area and then break down? Test lower regression lines, then do an SOS out in 2021. I'm not sure. We're not trying to predict. We just know that there's a few key sentiments we're about to enter right now. So see Bitcoin entering a trading range just as the US dollar enters a trading range. This is important for us. They have a relative movement to one another because they're kind of offsets of each other. I won't go through the idea of explaining the relationship or the offset, because more importantly, what I want to look at today, actually, we'll quickly go over a few things. We'll quickly look at Link on the daily versus Bitcoin. And the reason why I wanted to show this is because between 2018 and 2019, you had a beautiful, beautiful accumulation pattern. You had your SOS, your backup, your secondary SOS, LPS, SOS, LPS, higher high, higher low, higher low, and then a massive breakout moment. Now, look at the length of time it took. You're talking about from early 2017 to end of 2018, 600 days of time through the box. Beautiful. Sounds about right. And then look at this. Between the first start of the breakout, you had another 500 days of the first part of the market cycle growth. And then the parabolic cycle was much shorter, much, much shorter lived. Now, part of the reason why I want to take a look at Link here is because I'm really interested in its story of accumulation. Now that I'm smarter, because I have other friends who are smarter than me, let me know that this is a very good Oracle solution, and then it's providing benefits to the ecosystem. Let's assume that Link has legs. Well, how far down do we go? Do we come down to this regression line and start building an accumulation box for another few hundred days? Let's say 300. That would be really nice to see. So we're going to be constantly keeping an eye on some of these other larger market movers like Link, because they represent something in the ecosystem as a whole. It was very bullish against everything else, so it was one of our market leaders. So as it likely moves into a new area of reaccumulation, I'm going to want to keep my eyes on that. I'm going to want to know that it's in the accumulation area because I'm going to be able to trade some of that upward volatility during its first selling climax and its first automatic rally. So I'm going to be looking to enter a position into Link for that automatic rally position where, okay, we come down, we hear primary support, let's say selling climax here. And then that first automatic rally back up to like this box range, right? That's what I'm going to be looking for over the next few months. Because I believe Link is a long-term player and you're looking at a potential like 136% box run, maybe even higher. A few months out, but nonetheless, start to pre-plan and build a strategy ahead of time so you already know what you're going to do. The other reason I wanted to look at Link was to point out its volume during its accumulation range. Look how high these volume and absorption supply characterization of the candles are through that accumulation range. And then look how it thinned out into absolutely nothing but basically retail traders and declining volume is since the breakout, since the first SOS and LPS, declining volume, right? And look how little supply came in. This is going to come out a lot lower, where we could be seeing easily maybe $2 to $4 Link pretty easily. Right? It could come to, you could have a selling climax that came down all the way to here, right? And then an automatic rally and build a box like this, spring, right into 2025 as well. So keeping a close eye on that longer time frame. I'm going to keep it at that. I think we covered a lot today. If you guys are interested, leave your thoughts, your comments, your questions down below. Give us the thumbs up if you like this content. We have a podcast coming out tomorrow for Tiho's Token Tangent Thursday, something like this, with Matthew Finestone of Loopring. We're also going to be sending out a free little breakdown of Loopring to our free newsletter. Now, this is just a practice run for some of the stuff we're working on later, but everyone will get that. It'll just be a short synopsis. And then to all the private Bear members, we've got more PDFs coming from you guys, ready for you guys, so be sure to check your inboxes. This month's new newsletter will be out always on the first-ish of the first Monday of each month. Yeah, try to do it like that, so I have my weekend still. And we've got some special stuff coming up for you guys in the future where we're just going to start doing more giveaways. So keep your eyes open on all that. This is Teal with the Arcane Bear. I'm very grateful for all your guys' support and all the fun stuff we've been able to do together throughout the years. Keeping that long-term picture in mind, recognizing how far away 2017 feels, but how little amount of time that is when you're growing and building something, and keep that on your mantle. Keep that as one of your breastplates of investment. Think 3, 5, 10, 20 years out into the future and try to make your best choice today for what 20 years into the future looks like. It was Teal with the Arcane Bear. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see you again on the next show. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got actually 2 shows for you guys tomorrow. Lucky 2.